All right, so today's going to be a video without any frills. It's just going to be quick, down and dirty. To update anybody who's listening, to update Omega here. Um, there was the last couple of days there have been three shootings, officer-related shootings against black males in the United States, and they vary in scope and situational details. So, of the three, there's one that we don't know. There's one that appears to be justified, but not all the facts are in. And then the third one looks pretty sketchy or shady on the police's end. So we'll just go through them. There's a gentleman you'll find on YouTube with a white shirt. Was in the passenger seat of his girlfriend's car, gets pulled over. He notifies the officer that he's a concealed carry permit licensee in the state of Minnesota, and the officer at that point claims that he asked or ordered the individual to exit the vehicle and surrender his weapon, and the girlfriend is claiming that he asked for the ID. In any event, the gentleman went for his ID, and the cop shot him 5 times in the chest and killed him. And then the second situation was a black guy in a red shirt who was got out of his car and was in an altercation with 2 police officers. It got into a ground fight. Both cops at the same time basically said he's going for his gun, and they shot him dead right there. The person did turn out to have a firearm in his pocket, a small handgun, and he turned out he's a convicted felon and a convicted child molester. That one's the one that's looking pretty justified. Third situation was 19-year-old guy, or police ordered him to get on his face. He laid down and then they shot him. And the only independent video we have, it looks pretty bad for the police. We don't know. I mean, he might have been going for a gun in his pocket. We don't really know. We just know that it looks bad at this point. Anyways, the immediate response from the black community has been open season on white folks and police officers. So I was watching the Dallas situation that you were talking with me about earlier, Omega. I was watching it last night live via the book face, and at that point I knew there was a protest, but I didn't realize it was a Black Lives Matter protest. At that point they were saying, 10 officers or 11 officers, and at least 3 of them had been killed, and that it had been a sniper style ambush.
So that's been verified? It's verified as a Black Lives Matter protest?
I'm not sure at this stage, to be honest. But I know that the black community's going a bit crazy about it. I don't understand. Okay, so here's the thing, Omega, with the white guy, and this seems to be the one that people are most angry about, is the one with the white shirt that had the concealed carry license. Mm-hmm. When you have a concealed carry license, there are certain protocols you're required to follow. For example, anytime you come into a consensual encounter with a police officer, that's to say that you've been pulled over or a police officer stops you in public and wants to speak with you, you're pretty much usually required. Now, in the state of Minnesota, you're not required to announce the presence of a loaded firearm to a police officer. In that state where this occurred, you don't have to do that. In California, where I live, you are required to do that. And it is common practice. It's common practice in many places, and generally concealed carry permit holders will elect to notify the police officer, though it is a catch-22. So on one hand, the police officer might become more nervous because they are now aware of the fact that the individual they're dealing with is armed with deadly force. But then on the other hand, they now know what they're getting into, so they may be able to proceed more calmly and maybe not notice the firearm throughout the course of the consensual encounter, freak out and kill the guy, right? So that's the pros and cons of either or. Now, that said, I did check up, and in Minnesota where this occurred, it is common practice to do a surrender of the firearm during the course of a consensual encounter. So what the officer will generally do is ask for the individual to exit his vehicle, where he will then put his hands on the back of his head, and the police officer that is engaging with this individual or his partner will physically disarm the individual or remove the individual's weapon from his persons, and then clear the weapon and place it somewhere, out of reach, for the duration of the encounter until they establish identity and establish innocence, etc., etc. Now, as far as I can tell, he didn't do that. As far as I can tell, it never happened.
Just so you know, there's two reports. One is it was a Black Lives Matter protest, and the other is it was a protest over black deaths. But I would definitely say it would be a mixture of both.
Well, it's clearly got to be related to these three situations. I mean,
oh, absolutely,
timelines wise. But you know what's weird to me? What I don't understand is people rush to a sort of a rush judgment, a knee-jerk reaction, if you will, where they want to jump straight into war with all white folks and with the police officers because of this situation. I don't understand. I don't understand where the wisdom is to be held there.
Well, it always surprises me, actually. Obviously I'm not American, but from somebody who's on the outside looking in at this situation, what really blows my mind is it's this idea which is really propagated by the left, and you see it in a lot in American universities, and that is that a minority group or a black person is incapable of being a racist. And
oh God, I had somebody comment on one of my videos yesterday with that exact thing.
I just, as somebody from a different country, we sort of look at that mentality, and it just blows us away. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, yes, I had somebody stop by the channel the other day to tell me, black people, you're an idiot. Black people can't be racist. They can only be prejudiced. They can't be racist because they don't have any power. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how do you figure? I mean, we have plenty of black judges. We got plenty of black police officers. We got plenty of black politicians. We've got plenty of there's a representative model. So in America, black people represent approximately 13% of the total population. Mm-hmm. So we have at least 13% in the police departments. We have at least 13% in the political arena. We have at least 13. There's plenty of powerful black people in this country, and especially when you start getting into we'll say like first generation immigrant black individuals in America. So these are people that have come over from, say, South Africa, who were black and come over with an education. Even they don't understand it. And most of those, I've met many of them, and most of them are educated and are doing well for themselves financially. They don't have that mentality. Their mentality is if you don't listen to the police officers and you happen to be armed, chances are you might get shot.
Sure.
And so I'm a little surprised by the whole thing, and being that I live in California where white people are the minority, I'm a little shocked too, because if I pulled the same shit with a police officer, he would shoot me dead.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fact that I'm white. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm white. And certainly has nothing to do with the fact that he's black. That's where we get into conversations about profiling and stuff and whether or not that's okay. And everybody seems to be in a different place with that argument. I don't know if you're familiar with that the profiling debacle in America.
No.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, the police got into a lot of trouble. They admitted that when they do pullovers, they do profile people, meaning they'll look at a person and they'll say, that black guy is dressed kind of like a gangbanger. I wonder if he's carrying drugs.
Yeah.
And then
I mean, you have to weigh these things up statistically, and there's no racial intent involved in logic and numbers. And if you're dealing with, and yourself, you're a soldier. You've served in in countries where that if you're dealing with a certain kind of people, there is a certain kind of threat, which is very, very relevant. It's not a racial. It's not a racial discrimination. It's not a racial thing. It's just a fact. And if people, want to whine and whinge about profiling, well, I mean, they just have to look at facts, and the facts are that and I'm not just pointing the finger at African Americans. It's where you've got any number of these minority groups in low socioeconomic areas. There are going to be social issues, and it's no different for white people. If you get a police officer that goes into a low socioeconomic area, which is notorious for drug dealing or whatever, they will go in there and if they see a white guy, they'll approach with caution. But if you go down into some very rich area of America and you have a police officer pulling up a African American man who's driving a Ferrari or a Porsche, he's probably not going to be too concerned. So it's not actually about race. It's about the reality of what they're dealing with on the ground. And I'm no expert on it, but
no, I think that's fair.
Logical.
I think that's fair. I think that's a very fair statement, and it's true. The unfortunate reality, though, is because of this Dallas, Texas shooting that's gone on, where they've been targeting police officers. A lot of these cops, and they all pay attention to this stuff. I mean, they're all in forums talking to each other, comparing notes. That's what cops do, and they're gonna not want to patrol these low socioeconomic groups, and the result is going to be that black folks are going to get victimized more because police are going to be unwilling to go into their neighborhoods for good reason, and it's kind of sad. But at the same time all of this is going on, Omega, there's a situation a couple of days ago where a black lady slit her kids' throats and killed them. And it's sort of funny because I was talking to, not funny, haha, but funny, like ironic. I was talking to, there's a group of guys that I do live streaming with on their channel, and I would say that group is probably about 80% black, mostly American. I think we have one Jamaican, and really cool group of guys, very common sense oriented. They don't have the mentality of the people that we're referring to. And in talking to them, even they don't understand it, and they look at Black Lives Matter and they go, now how they're out there fucking screaming and yelling over these police shootings, and especially the one in the red shirt was a convicted felon and a pedophile, and they're more concerned with his life than that of a cop who's protecting the peace. But then where's Black Lives Matter when we have a black woman murdering her black children? Where are they on that? Why aren't they talking about that? So it's just the irony there is astounding, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It's just astounding.
It's what I've come to expect in modern day left-wing progressive society. So, I mean, here in Australia, this week we had two men, a gay couple, that raped a 10-month-old baby, and in the most horrific fashion recorded it, and then were bragging about it on Skype, and that's how they were caught. And the media here has completely suppressed the fact that they were, from the LGBTI, they've completely suppressed the fact that they've said that they were friends. Another one said they were mates. Another one said they were housemates. But if you had a different group, for example, a religious group or, certain other groups, it would be front and centre front page news. So I think just the way society deals with the sensitivities around certain groups, it just tends to, you get this mangulated form of truth. You sort of have a very obscure way of dealing with it. And obviously with these matters, there's a lot of sensitivity involved. And I, from the outside looking in, can understand that because of the history of America, the limited history that I, really understand. But still, there comes a time when you're dealing with factual information that you have to deal with fact. You have to deal with logic, and we're seeing this huge movement away from that in a lot of issues, in a lot of areas, not just this one.
Well, and a lot of these guys are talking about wanting to go back to Africa, and it's like what do you think is to be gained there? You're going to go there, and 90% of you are going to die. I mean, that's the reality of that decision. It's Africa is not, with the exception of South Africa, Africa itself is not a settled, civilized, safe area with infrastructure and reliable government. And they're sure as fuck not going to give a shit about your feelings,
Nah.
And it's when they go through and they're religiously cleansing you because you don't have the same religion they do. You're going to be sitting there thinking to yourself, why on earth did I make this decision to come here? It's the irony is actually I'm feeling a bit of irony because on my desktop I've been sitting on a video idea that I've been wanting to talk about called willing segregation. And it was to be a response video to some of the comments that I've had. Because, and as you know, I've gotten comments like, fuck that, it's time for war against white people, and, we want to go back to Africa, we want white people to move out of America, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I had this whole plan to do this video about willing segregation, to show how absurd the whole situation would be, and then to track the two groups through their progress down a number of years to show what would happen to either group. And in my head, I had considered this a totally absurd notion that America won't, and will never head in this absurd direction because it's obviously absurd. I may be wrong about that. At least I may be wrong about the fact that we're headed in that direction.
Yeah, it's a completely regressive idea. And when I talk about progressive politics and regressive politics, I don't liken that to the modern day version of a progressive government in what we're seeing in something like the Obama administration.
Well, you're referring to regressive liberalism.
Yeah, and I really see that this whole movement is a part of that. It's almost an orthodoxy, if you like, it's a mantra which has been programmed into young people in universities. A lot of it's been propagated out of American universities, you see. And you know what? If you actually go and have a look at the curriculum of a lot of American universities, the study of Western culture, for example, was a part of to get a certain master's degree or some high degree in any university, you'd have to cover Western culture. And in a large majority of American universities, it's been completely removed. And these gender studies professors that have actually gone far outside their mandate and included all this racial orthodoxy has really been the source of a lot of this anger. It's a source of a lot of this hatred, and it really, I mean, when you look at any country, any country at all, I mean, you can look at Australia, you can look at America, you can look at a lot of countries, England, we do understand that there has to be some sort of recompense, but you know, segregating society, these forms of extremism, what are they going to achieve? Absolutely nothing. It's just going to tear communities apart. It's going to cause more instances like what we've just seen.
Not just communities in America, it'll tear families apart because there's a high instance of interracial families in America where one party is white and one party is black, and the children are mixed race. So it's the absurdity of it. I mean, you're talking on a national scale about destroying families and communities for the sake of an ideal that just doesn't work. I mean, and not only that, but it's every time a black person gets shot, it's oppression, regardless of what the black person did. Anytime, period. Anytime a white cop shoots a black person, doesn't matter if that person was shooting at the cop, doesn't matter if he had a gun, if he was a felon, if he was up to no good, blah, 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 blah. You know, here's the other thing. That the guy in the white shirt, the one that everybody's up in arms about, they were also in possession of a lot of marijuana in a state where marijuana is not legal.
Yeah.
And he's concealed carrying a firearm.
And look, like I said, I'm no expert on American issues, but I'm pretty sure it's a correct statistic, and that is that young black male men are the leading murderers of young black male men. Is that correct? Or?
Yes, that's correct. The majority of violence against black young males is black young males, but it's also the other issue is, to give you an idea, you've got 13% of the population. That's, they're 12.8% of the population. And that representative model is doing approximately 56% of all crime in the country. And then so when you look at that, you have to ask yourself, what the hell? And what's interesting about it is it's the same people committing crimes over and over again.
Yeah.
So what you have is you have this group, and it's the same, 30% or 40% of their population that is causing all of it. It is they're repeat. It's all, most of it is repeat offenders. You know what I mean? So, and there's a clear trend that there's a reason that statistically they say, oh well, somebody who does petty theft is X% more likely to graduate to armed robbery, and then from there X% more likely to graduate to murder, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's because this is what happens in the black community is they start out with petty theft, and then they armed robbery, and then eventually they get in a bad position where they got to shoot somebody. It's the same people, reoccurring crimes, same group of people over and over and over again, and their life, for some reason, the life of a criminal who commits crimes over and over again is somehow more important than the life of a person, regardless of what color they are, who is doing a job to stop that crime from occurring, who's there to prevent victimization. And I don't understand that. I don't understand that. And I don't understand why some white cop shooting a black guy in Minnesota somehow equates to I need to die. I've never victimized a black person in my life.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I get along just fine with intelligent, normal black people who have a sane attitude towards the world. So I'm a little dumbfounded, I guess, when I see this sort of thing going on. I don't really understand why my life is less important.
Yeah. And I'm just reading something which doesn't help matters at all. It's written by the Guardian newspaper, which is a far left newspaper. Mm-hmm. They've written a story, and another paper's written a story, and the Guardian has grossly distorted statistics on shootings. But it's at the end of the day, I mean, you, you, no one has the right to paint any. I mean, the whole. What is the whole? Center of racism. The whole center of racism is judging a race or a people without a just cause because of their race. You're discriminating against them. You're bigoted towards them, and if people like that are exemplifying all of those traits, uh, when you've actually done nothing to them, when you don't harbour any hatred towards them at all because of the actions, especially in America. I mean, how many people live in America? How many people in California, for example? It is in a multicultural world that we live in. These modern day societies where we're a global community, there will actually have to be a point where people start judging each other upon their merits, and judging people according to the ideology they follow, and scrutinising that correctly. We don't see a lot of that. We see a lot of scrutiny of ideologies, for example, which are way off the beaten track. But if you look at an ideology, for example, like Islam, and you study it for a day, you can see it's a bad ideology. It's an extremely violent ideology. If you actually have a look at Black Lives Matter and actually have a look at what they stand for, they are a race hate group. They are the black equivalent to the KKK. They want to segregate society. They want to segregate people of race. They're extremely racist. And honestly, I'm very saddened by the events that have happened over there. But at the end of the day, any ideology or any group that will revert to violence to make their point is not a group you want to have around at the end of the day.
Yep, I agree. No, I couldn't possibly agree more. It's sort of sad because this whole thing. It's like, even when we get down to civil discourse has become this alien thing where 90% of it is tropes, and the other 10% of it is attacking your opponent's character. Nobody argues topics based off of merit anymore, and I don't think they even know how. And it's kind of pathetic. But even more so than that, as a person who you wouldn't believe some of the responses I've seen, like, "Oh, he should have. Why didn't he go for a wounding shot?" What?
Goodness me.
What? There, I'm gonna be very gentle about it because somebody who's a friend said the same thing too, and I said, "Listen," and I don't blame him because he's never fired a firearm, he's never held a firearm, he's not trained, he doesn't even live in America, he doesn't know better, but what nobody shoots to wound. You don't do that. It's a firearms no-no. If you're going to escalate a situation to deadly force, you shoot to kill. That's what you do. You don't do that in the military. You don't do it in the police force. If you're armed security and you have to pull your weapon, you better damn sure be willing to kill with it, because that's what you're doing. But not only that, the danger of shooting to wound is that you could miss and hit an innocent bystander. That's why people.
Or the guy could pull out a gun and shoot you.
Exactly. Well, that's why they train to shoot center mass. You don't try any fancy bullshit when you're in the middle of a life and death situation. Just shoot center mass. That's what the police officers do. That's what armed security does. That's what the military does, with the exception of some specialty portions of the branches. We're mostly taught to shoot center mass. Go for the torso. Go for a kill shot. Aim for the heart. Aim for the lungs. Aim for the brain. You don't aim for arms and legs and stupid shit like that. This isn't a Clint Eastwood Western. It's real life. And so I'm always a little astonished because you see within civil discourse, which people don't know how to do, you see a lot of tropes, you see a lot of personal attacks, but you also see a lot of people talking far outside of their realm, talking far outside of their knowledge base. And as somebody who has fired more rounds than most people will ever see in their lifetime, I'm always a little shocked to see people talking about firearms and they're so far off base it's not even funny. So that's a big component of it to me. But also when you have these groups and what they're talking about, they can't win. They can't win. They're 13% of the population. And they have firearms ownership of roughly half that of white people. It's like marching yourself into a slaughter. I mean, I don't want to kill any black people. I don't want to shoot anybody if I don't have to. But, if somebody's threatening my life, I'm going to defend it.
Yeah, I guess this begs a question. This begs the question: where does the government go from here? It's going to be interesting to see in the coming weeks just how the government actually responds to this. It's obviously it's obviously a poison ideology, and I'm specifically referring, just so people don't get angry, to Black Lives Matter. It's a poison ideology. I've seen the cultic way people are brought in and they have to. I saw a YouTube clip of them recanting a creed, which was, it was just creepy. It'll be interesting to see how American universities are going to deal with this situation within campuses, as far as Black Lives Matter goes. That's what I'm really waiting to see. But I mean, you're talking about a country where you've got a radical imam preaching the murder of homosexuals, and then 2 weeks later 50 homosexuals are killed, and the government can't even have an open and honest discussion about it.
It's pathetic, isn't it?
Yeah, so what I'm wondering is, with the regressive leftist government that America has currently, how are they going to deal with this? And obviously Barack Obama's obviously African American himself, and I think his father was a far left regressive socialist. So
yes, he was.
So it's just going to be interesting to see how they deal with it.
A Muslim too.
Yeah,
he was a Muslim.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what's interesting too is just looking at the situation now, in referring to population statistics by race and so forth. Assuming that what's going on right now and its escalation doesn't change the choices that people make, it's going to be about 30 to 40 years. You were saying before, I wonder how long before people's attitudes have to change about this. And the answer to that question is assuming that what's going on doesn't actually change people's choices in life partners and so forth, meaning the segregation attitude doesn't cause people to make different choices in spouses or significant others. The answer to your question is about 30 to 40 years when the multiple race section will become the majority population in America, meaning the biggest population of peoples in America will become 2 or more races. So that's projected for, I can't remember if it's 2044 or 2045, something like that. So that's about the time frame. So around the time you and I are old men is about the time that attitude is going to have to change. Unless, of course, this alters that timeline, in which case, we're going to see more segregation sort of attitude. Fuck's sake. And then we'll see less interracial couples and so forth. But it's the whole thing's sad. I mean, it's sad. You know what I mean? It's I'm in an interracial relationship. You're in an interracial relationship. Plenty of the people that I know are in interracial relationships. So it's sort of strange for me to see this segregation sort of attitude. Because by and large, I don't really think most white people really feel that way.
And to be honest, if you look at history, history is something I do enjoy. But if you look across history at any country where an extreme ideology has become an issue, within each country, it's about 10% of any given population or any ethnicity that holds to these extreme ideologies, and that 10% actually has the ability to move that whole group or to somehow gain political momentum to basically get that whole group and place them under their own ideology. You saw that in Germany, obviously with Adolf Hitler. 10% of Germans were fascists, and they, brought the whole country under fascism. We see it in Palestine. You've got Hamas, and basically the whole lot of the Palestinian people are now under that, and so what I really think needs to be addressed in a very logical way is the ideology of Black Lives Matter, and this is a thing. There's nothing we can do, nothing that nothing that somebody who's outside of that can do. It's the same issue with Islam. I mean, the only way Islam is ever going to stop terror is to reform Islam from the inside, and it has to be done by Muslims. And quite frankly, that's probably never going to happen because it's embarrassing. But I think the African Americans need to address this themselves.
Well, the Marine Corps would refer to that as self-policing, which is to look out for your fellow Marine, and when you see him fucking up and acting stupid, straighten him out.
Yeah, and it's intellectualism, Red. It's intellectualism. It's people being able to judge others on an intellectual basis. This sort of victimhood mentality, where I'm automatically entitled to something because of some sort of wrong that's been done to my race or my gender or whatever. This victimhood in America has just become so rampant, and it's not just. And Black Lives Matter have picked up on this. They've watched the socialists in the LGBTI movement use it. There's other groups that are using it, and it's sort of, we're even seeing it with, like Donald Trump, for example, with the whole Mexican question. There's this victimhood narrative going on, but they really need to have a discussion in the African American community and say, do we really want this crap?
I was talking with some of the guys last night about the whole Trump thing, and I said, it's very interesting because we have. On the left, we have an individual who has basically committed treason and been caught, and all charges are dismissed. Has caused the negligent deaths of people like me, people who are willing to be in danger for the betterment of and the furtherance of their country, and has lied about being shot at and stuff, has absolutely no respect for the system or the people that it represents. And or that it's supposed to represent, because the government we have no longer represents the people, not anymore.
And even in Australia, we're asking the same questions. We're sort of saying this person broke the law, and not only that, has constantly and she's constantly lied, and until she's been caught red-handed, and we haven't even talked about the witness. In her case, that was committed suicide by shooting himself twice in the back of the head.
Yep. Oh yeah, in the back of the head. Yeah, and it's
a neck wound and a head wound.
Yeah. And and it's and you look at these situations and you go and then on the right you've got Trump who has stated, and I'm gonna say as verbatim as I can remember it. He said, "We have an immigration problem. We need to reform our immigration." Now, this is something everybody has agreed on. And then he said, in order to reform immigration, we need to shut immigration down for a period of time in which we will reform our immigration system so that it works. And then we can reopen immigration. That was his statement. what came out in the news was articles with the headline saying Trump wants to ban all immigration.
Yeah.
You know, this is what we're dealing with. I mean, this is World War II Nazi level propaganda. It is. It's nothing else to call it. I don't
Yeah.
know what else to call it because there isn't another name for it. There isn't even another situation to compare it to. This is the kind of shit that China does. It's the kind of shit that Nazi Germany did. It's the kind of shit that communist Russia did.
Yeah, and you know what? There has been a positive through all this, and even in Australia, listening to Donald Trump, for example, it's becoming more commonplace for the common man to understand that the media is being controlled. The media has an agenda,
Yep.
and you know, you only have to go back 10 years, and that was sort of an attitude reserved for conspiracy theorists and, you know, guys who had more of a grasp on politics and life than most. But now it's becoming fairly commonplace, and things like YouTube, the computer-based media outlets are really starting to make a difference.
Yeah,
People are really starting to listen to it.
you're absolutely right. The electronic frontier, as it were, is probably responsible for a great deal of that. I know it's been the engine by which I use to gather the facts instead of what the media has to say. I still
Yeah.
pay attention to what they're saying, but you know it's sort of funny because viewership is dropping off a fucking cliff out here where the media is concerned. You know, Fox has got something like a third of what it used to have. And it's just
Yeah.
people just don't trust it anymore, and for good reason, you know. And it's sad. The whole thing is really kind of just genuinely sad, and I wish that people had a little bit more of a sustainable attitude towards what's going on right now, because the real enemy is our government right now. Not our police departments, not our fire departments, but our government, not our military, our government. These are the people, the politicians, the NSA, Congress, the White House. That's our enemy right now.
Yeah, and it's quite disgusting when you've got, you know, governments who, through their own incompetence and stupidity, are directly responsible for massive socio-economic issues in these communities. Then they throw the police out on the front line, and basically you'll even get your own president standing there pointing the finger at the police department saying, these guys are not doing their job correctly, and pointing the finger at them, passing blame. And the result, the end result now is dead police officers, because the government, you know, doing what the government does, not taking accountability for its failed policies, mate.
Oh, it's crazy. It's just absurd, and the whole thing. It just makes me sad to see, because by and large, everything that I fought for has now been undone in 8 years.
Yeah.
In 8 years of Obama White House, everything I fought for, everything people like me fought for, every ideal that we swore to uphold has been undone by people like Obama, people like Hillary. And do I think that Trump is necessarily better? No, I don't. But what I think he represents is people that are done with the status quo.
Yeah.
And even though a lot of them are, rednecks and stuff like that, I would say that if you were to analyze the supporter group of these different candidates, you would see that the vast majority of Trump supporters are people who have sort of woken up to what the government is up to, woken up to what the media is up to, and they're just done with it. We're done with it. But I don't know. It's just sad because you got all these. You look at these cops in Dallas. It's like they had nothing to do with these other shootings, man. They didn't do nothing to anybody. They don't deserve to die.
No, absolutely not. It's anyone that says they, this is what I mean with these ideologies. Anyone that says they do, they're a disgrace. They really are a disgrace.
Man,
it's sickening.
Sad. and I'm not a big cop fan. I mean, you know that well. You know I'm not a huge fan
Yeah.
of the police department. Now, I have my my disagreements with the police department. First and foremost, we have a lot of military crossover. So something to the effect of like 60% of all cops are from previous military.
Yeah.
and and the problem with not having a very high standard of training, which the police do not have a very high standard of training. The problem with that is that regardless of being military or not, if you don't use that training regularly, you lose it. So their skill level goes down over time. And the police department's training policy is pathetic. It's just pathetic.
Yeah.
That their hit to miss ratio in a gunfight is a joke.
Yeah.
So it's they need a lot more training, a lot, and the whole thing is regrettable. But it doesn't change the fact that these guys didn't deserve to die, and it just makes me sad. Just
Yeah.
just makes me sad because even if they're not the best trained, even if they're not the cream of the crop when it comes to human specimens, at least they have an ideal that people can get on board with. They wake up every morning, they strap on a gun, and they go defend the law, and
Yeah.
put their life on the line to do it. And even if I'm not a big fan, I still have a certain level of respect for that. So I'm
Well, I
just,
mean, at the end of the day, any one of these police officers can pull some, and I mean, this is what they're dealing with. They're dealing with on a daily basis.
sure.
Pulling, some guy, a cop saying, I pulled somebody over, a more tolerant kind of police officer, and the guy just pulled a gun out and just shot my partner in the face. There'll be all these sorts of stories. There'll be that reality that they're dealing with every single day. They've got their children, they've got their families, and if they've got an armed suspect who is potentially reaching for a gun at that moment, you've got to make a judgment call. It's not a racially based judgment call, although I do believe that there will be cases where you do have genuine racism in both white and black and Chinese and
Yeah, of course.
with groups. But at the end of the day, the reality of the US and the sort of, like I said, these low socioeconomic areas, you just don't know, do you? I mean, you don't have the luxury of knowing whether somebody is going to shoot you or not. If you believe somebody is about to shoot you, there's only one course of action you can take.
It has to defend your
And
life.
yeah, exactly. And it's
Well, and what else is interesting too is I find that people's perception of the firearm is genuinely skewed, and I know that you're very well trained with long arms. That's primarily what you use in the course of your hobby, and
yeah.
so you have a keen understanding of what it means to use a firearm to shoot at something, and it's interesting to me because people's perception, they regard firearms sort of like it's we have this store out here called Office Depot, and Office Depot has this commercial where they have something called the Office Depot Easy Button. I don't know if you have Office Depot over there or not.
No.
Okay, well, in the commercial, they hit the Office Depot Easy button, and then whatever they want just appears, in the commercial. And they actually do. They sell these Office Depot Easy buttons as sort of like a novelty item. Anyway, people regard firearms like it's an Office Depot Easy button to end life. Like you just press a button and the bad guy dies. It doesn't really work like that, and you know that. You need to really know your shit, and you better be on your best game, or you're in trouble. The same thing when you go out. When you're hunting, if you're not on your best game, then you don't catch a lot of what you're hunting, do you?
No, it takes training and it takes
Yeah.
yeah. Got to
Now,
know what you're doing.
now, if what you were shooting back, if what you were shooting at was shooting back at you, do you think that you would hit as often?
Absolutely not.
Do you think that you would be thinking as clearly?
No.
Yeah. So, I know that's a little absurd considering what you hunt, but it's just sort of funny because it's like people think that just because you're trained to use a firearm, that you're like Clint Eastwood, cool as a cucumber every time you get into a firefight. It doesn't really work that way, you know. The adrenaline hits your body. You lose your fine motor controls. Your accuracy goes down. Your body feels weak. Breathing intensifies, which further causes damage to your accuracy. And you have to fight all of these human factors that more or less are making it harder for you to stay alive. And people don't really understand that. They think that, just because a cop has a lot of trigger time at the shooting range, that he's a stone cold killer. And it's just, the whole notion of it is absurd to me. It's just absurd.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, obviously in these sorts of situations, there's going to be a lot going on. It's never a simple thing.
And
I don't know the full details of these other shootings. That's something I'll have to go back and look at. But all I know is, statistically, and what's going on a social level. All these sorts of things act as a catalyst, really, for a lot of these events.
Well, and the facts, and here's the really interesting part. Even once you do go and actually read the news articles and stuff like that, you're going to realize not all of the facts are in. There's just a lot of factors we just don't know. And it's like with the guy with the red shirt. He was a felon with a firearm. Not supposed to happen. He had a firearm in his pocket, which he didn't have a license to have there. He was according to the police officers, he was trying to get his gun out of his pocket. And the news article, the actual headline was his hands were empty.
Yeah,
That's the news line. Not only did they showed a photo, front cover news. They showed a photo of him laying there on his back with a bullet hole in his chest, bleeding everywhere, and the headline is his hands were empty. Meanwhile, he's a felon with a fucking loaded firearm in his pocket.
Yeah.
And it's like how can they even sleep at night and call themselves journalists is beyond me. There is no integrity there at all.
I think too. You've got to look at this on the flip side. And I guess this is a part of the victimhood. How are the white folks reacting to the fact that they've been targeted racially? I don't know what happened after was there any backlash after the Charleston shootings?
Not
that
from
white supremacist.
Not from white folks, no. Not that
from the African American community.
Oh, what, the African American community going after white people? Yeah, oh yeah.
After the Charleston shootings?
Yeah, they were rioting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
if you look at the flip side, we've got 5 dead. I saw a report which just said 14 people had died.
Well, as of last night, what I had seen, and what's weird is the news agency that was streaming onto Facebook was not very organized. So there was a lot of cutting in and misinformation and stuff. But at the time, they were saying 11 people shot. Three cops dead, and they had one guy in custody, but nobody knew if that was the guy. They just believed it was the guy. And then later on, they were saying it was 2 shooters, and so I was still in bed. I was still laying in bed when I was first messaging you on G+. So I actually haven't gotten a chance to look to see if there's been any updates, but it's wacky. We're living in wacky times, man.
Okay, well, I'll just finish this off before I head off with a statement, and that is, um, as a white person, seeing somebody from a different race come along and murder a bunch of white folks, I don't harbour any resentment towards the race. I harbour resentment towards the ideology, and this. If I had to give any group advice, it would be to judge the ideology, not the race.
Yeah.
And this is, something the left has a real issue with. Especially with stuff like Islam, they just cannot get it through their thick heads. It's not about judging the whole of the Arab nation. It's about scrutinizing the ideology. They have no problem doing that with other ideologies such as Christianity. But as soon as it's a minority ideology, that's just hands it off. And I would say, if a white man, when we saw that guy do the Charleston shootings over here, people thought it was reprehensible because of the ideology, that supremacist ideology. And for the African American folks in America, they really have to take hold of this and say this is a racist, radical ideology, and they need to deal with the ideology. And it's as dumb for an African American to get angry at white people for for something like the Charleston shootings. Getting angry at white people because of the Charleston shootings or because of a police. Well, I mean, it's just as dumb for me as a white person to get angry at African Americans now, and because of what's happened here. It's got to be judged upon the ideology. People really need to get their heads around that, and anyone who doesn't is they want something. It's about victimhood. It's about getting something for free. It's about whinging for the sake of whinging. It's just being a professional victim.
As if reparations will somehow solve this problem. This is absurd.
Yeah. It's ideologies, mate.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and that's we need to return to an era of intelligent civil discourse, and that's what needs to happen, where we attack ideas, not people. And that's
because you're not living in the era of African American slaves anymore. I mean, that's not happened, and there are a lot of bad ideologies on both sides. The only way they're ever going to deal with any of this in any community, the white and the black community, is to sit back and say these ideologies have no place. They really are poisonous. And I'm not talking about this leftist sort of approach where they just anything that goes against their personal ideology is bad. I'm talking about scrutinizing ideologies properly, like Black Lives Matter, and saying, right, this is an absolute load of crap. This will be removed from American universities. This will be treated for what it is. And it needs to be treated as much as like the KKK. It needs to be viewed in that same.
I agree entirely.
Set of eyes.
Well, you know
that's what it is.
What's interesting is I'm going to use a supporting news story, and then we'll wrap it up because we've actually hit just about an hour. But recently there was a woman who. She runs or is higher up in a political activism group for the defense of Syrian refugees, for Middle Eastern refugees. Okay, So she was raped by 3 men recently, right? Genuinely raped. And when she went in to give her police report, she stated that the men she was raped by were speaking German. Not more than 8 or 9 hours later, she came back into the police station to admit that the individuals who raped her were actually speaking Farsi. and were of
Yeah.
Middle Eastern descent, and that she had lied because she didn't want to damage people's perceptions of the refugees.
It's just insanity.
Yep.
It's Cologne all over again.
Yeah, it's insane. And it's like my thought process is, so you're gonna let your attackers roam free to rape some more women because you don't want people to get mad about refugees that we're already angry about. You know, we can't look at the rape statistics in Germany and see what's happened over there. We can't look at the rape statistics in Sweden and see what's happened over there. We can't look at the rape statistics in England and see what's happened over there. Like, you know, you see
It's
that.
these narratives. It's
Yeah,
the narratives.
I know.
You know, they can't speak, and you've got the same problem with Black Lives Matter. There's the slave narrative, this narrative which is propagated by the left that it's impossible for somebody of color to be a racist. That same narrative of the minority then translates to Islam within these countries, which you know, a person in the left, by actually bringing factual information, by actually exposing the ideology, it betrays their narrative. So their whole house of cards falls down. So that's why we had a 5-day gap between the rapes and the sexual assaults in Cologne before the media was actually able to report it, because it's the media there is controlled by the left.
Yep.
So you've got a situation where if they actually report things factually, it will betray their narrative. What it'll basically do is expose their narrative for the load of crap it is, and that's what needs to happen here.
Yep.
The elephant in the room needs to be addressed here, and people, you know, these groups need to stop hiding behind their victimhood. They need to address this in a very real way. They need to address the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is an extreme racist ideology that is going to tear America apart as far as the African American community is involved. And I think people like Donald Trump, you know, are brave enough to actually say, I'm going to address elephants in the room. And that's why he's hated, you know, because, yeah, the left, they just don't want to betray the narrative because the whole house of cards falls down.
I know, and they make the claim that it's because of how he says it, but it's not true. They would be attacking him.
It's just a lie. It's a complete manipulation.
Yeah, they would attack him regardless of how he spoke on the issue.
I don't think he's the greatest, you know, politician in the world, and to be honest, I don't know a great deal about Donald Trump. All I do know is that he's the only politician that is actually speaking honestly. And obviously, we talked about Hillary Clinton earlier on. Even in Australia, she's seen as a two-faced liar, who is a traitor to her own people. And then you've got Barack Obama, a guy who sends who gets aid sent to the Middle East in the form of firearms and hands it over to radical Islamist groups. And I mean, the rest of the world is watching America, and we just are completely blown away by it.
Scratching your head trying to figure out what the fuck happened. Yeah, it's
what is going on.
You know, it kills me. That's and I'm sure you know this, that Obama aid to the Middle East thing is a particularly foul subject to me, because the people he sent those, and it's not foreign aid supplies he sent, it's military aid supplies. He sent hard warfare related materials to the people that not barely 10 years ago I was being shot at by. He's disrespected people like me beyond a level that can ever be accounted for. I will never be satisfied with any explanation that comes out of his mouth until he faces a treason trial, which we all know will never happen. You know, and it's just the amount of disrespect to people.
ISIS are using all of those, you know, guns and things that were sent over are now being used by ISIS to murder.
Well, yeah, because he sent it all to untrained jihadists aka moderate Muslims, big quotey fucking fingers there, and ISIS being the hardened, bloodless criminals that they are, have gone through and fucking stolen all that shit, and now they're using it to fucking kill people, and that is somehow not our fault. Like, ugh. It makes me crazy because in 8 years, not even in 8 years, in his second term of 4 years, Obama undid everything that people like me fought to do. It's a complete and utter disrespect to people like me. You know, all of the people that I know that died over there died for nothing because of him. You know, and it's angering. In fact, to be honest, to be completely blatant, I feel rage about it. Is probably the only way to explain how it makes me feel. But
yeah, it's definitely dumber than feminism,
ugh.
and that's pretty dumb.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
pretty dumb.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish it up. Anyways, for those of you that are gonna hate the fuck out of this video, suck my dick. For the rest of you, have a good one. Later.